Trump makes waves in the Windy City, clashing with black journalists.
I think it's a very nasty question. I have answered the question. I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln.
The plan to officially nominate Kamala Harris. She's the only Democrat left standing. Time for her to pick a VP.
Have you chosen yet?
Speaking of VPs, J.D. Vance, he heads to the southern border. Hello, I'm Mary Ann Ahern. This is The Brief. There weren't really big political earthquakes this week, but the candidates, of course, they're busy. In fact, that campaign trail, it came here to Chicago. And that is our first takeaway for this week.
You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist.
The tone from the start was contentious.
You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit.
There were jeers from the crowd repeatedly, especially when Trump said this about Kamala Harris.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
The event started more than an hour late. Trump blamed audio issues and defended his record.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson.
The delay, according to NABJ sources to NBC5, happened because Trump initially refused to come out because of a live fact check, like this one, that says, quote, Trump repeats ridiculous statement about immigrants in this country illegally voting. There were protesters outside of the Hilton and a strong police presence. There were also Trump supporters.
There are a lot of people here in Chicago that do support President Trump.
And while some NABJ members questioned why Trump was invited, others came to hear what he had to say.
We only have 2 people to vote for. So if he's one of the people that we have to vote for, I would love to hear what he has to say, because we have 2 choices and, you know, it should be fair.
Kamala Harris was invited to attend the NABJ as well. She wasn't able to, but is offering an event with NABJ members in September. Her campaign released a statement reacting to Trump, saying in part, quote, Trump lobbed personal attacks and insults at black journalists the same way he did throughout his presidency. Also adding, he cannot unite America. That brings us to this week's takeaway number 2. Vice President Kamala Harris is the official nominee. Delegates gave her the needed votes in a virtual roll call. What does it mean? No more Democratic Party infighting. She'll face off against Trump in November.
So in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week.
This week, she campaigned in battleground Georgia at a high-energy rally featuring a performance from rap megastar Megan Thee Stallion, an effort to attract young voters. Because of the virtual roll call, the one on the convention floor will be ceremonial.
Illinois proudly casts for a true progressive and the father of the new political revolution, 74 votes for Bernie Sanders.
Takeaway number 3, the VP needs to pick her own VP, and the announcement is coming soon.
Have you chosen yet?
But we will know likely next week. She has to choose by August 7th, again for those ballot deadlines.
Vice President Harris has served in the role and knows what the role is about. And that is a very sort of special bit of knowledge, just like Vice President at the time Joe Biden had when picking her.
Some candidates took themselves out of the running, like North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Prominent Democratic governors Whitmer and Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro stumped for Harris this week.
It was more chaos, less jobs, and a far less freedom when Donald Trump was president.
Shapiro remains a top candidate, along with Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. But don't count out Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker or Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg just yet. both of which are among several at the top of the VP watch list who canceled events this weekend. This is happening as Harris holds personal interviews with the finalists. Strategists expect the choice to be more moderate than she is.
All of them are good choices because all of them tell a strong story about the vice president's agenda.
We're also seeing the potential VPs as surrogates for Harris, the way Vance is for Trump.
I'll ask you a simple question. Do we want open borders? Do we want to bankrupt Medicare by giving it to illegal aliens?
Vance's tour of the U.S.-Mexico border is our final takeaway for the week. Vance is using battleground Arizona as the setting to demonstrate that immigration is one of the Republican ticket's strongest issues and one of Harris's biggest obstacles. Republicans have branded her the border czar.
If people can come into this country and they know they're never going to be deported, you effectively have an open border. That's what Kamala Harris promised. That's what Kamala Harris did. And Donald Trump and I promised to do exactly the opposite.
Vance turned 40 years old on Friday. If the GOP ticket wins, he would be the third youngest vice president in history and the first millennial in nationwide elected office. Now that you're caught up, let's talk about the focus of the show, and it is key voter demographics. One group often overlooked, Asian Americans. When it came to Joe Biden's election from 2020 to 2024, Joe Biden lost 8 points in that demographic. But the question now, will Kamala Harris shake it up? Others also wonder, is the country ready to elect a woman of color?
And it is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win.
In the days since Vice President Kamala Harris entered the presidential race,
it really has energized the Asian American community and the South Asian community in a way that I haven't seen in a long time.
Kevin Olickle has been inundated with messages about phone banks and other events. Olickle is a state lawmaker and president of the country's oldest South Asian Democratic organization. He's also planning a South Asians for Harris delegate event during the DNC.
When you have candidates that look like the communities that they come from, it's really a validating feeling. For many of us, especially in the immigrant community, we're often told that politics and government is not for us.
The daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, Harris is on track to become the first South Asian American to lead a major party's presidential ticket. Northwestern University's Tabitha Bonilla.
There's a lot of pride in Harris as a candidate, particularly as someone who's multiracial. She's a woman, she is Black, she identifies also as Asian, she identifies as a child of immigrants.
Illinois Republican Erin Del Mar, who is Filipino, says identity doesn't necessarily translate to votes.
If you had policies that would not create a brighter future for myself or my family moving forward, regardless of where you came from or regardless if we share the same ethnicity, I wouldn't vote for you. And I think a lot of groups feel that way.
About half of Asian and Pacific Islander Americans identify as Democrats, and a quarter are Republicans, according to a survey done in May by AAPI Data and the Associated Press.
I think that just like other ethnic groups that are non-white, we're taken for granted through a lot of other political parties, both Republican and Democrat.
Asian American voters are often left out of the conversation altogether, Bonilla says, in part because they're viewed as less politically active than Black Americans, and also because they're such a diverse group.
We have South Asians, we have East Asians, we have Southeast Asians, we have Pacific Islanders, and to say that all of these individuals are experiencing this country, politics, in their home political environment in the same way is a really big statement.
Another interesting note, J.D. Vance's wife, Usha Vance, identifies as Indian American. Coming up next, we're going to hear from two congressmen, Delia Ramirez and Chuy Garcia. They have a lot to say about what matters to the Latino voters. Joining us now on The Brief for a conversation about the Latino vote. First of all, Telemundo's Iris Barrios, as well as Congresswoman Delia Ramirez and Congressman Chuy Garcia. Thank you both for being here. Tell us, how now does this race shape up with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, Delia? What do you think now? Does that make the Latino voters say, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to rethink my vote?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already seen polls even in Nevada where there's more excitement in the Latino community. People feel like we have an opportunity to make sure that we elect someone that's going to care about issues like the economy, immigration, healthcare, and they certainly see Kamala as that person.
Do you think the Latino vote probably going to be crucial in the next election, Congressman?
I think Latinos and the Latino vote is a cornerstone of the present and the future for the nation. Latinos and immigrants have powered the country during the COVID years. Without them, we wouldn't be the #1 economy in the world. Yet we have some economic challenges that people are feeling at the table, at the kitchen table. They are the cost of groceries, gas, diapers, and of course, medicine.
How does Harris at the top of the ticket also change perhaps the narrative that we often hear that Republicans are winning on the question of border security? Does she make a difference? There are many complaining that what has she done on the border?
Well, let me say to you, I think that one of the things that's going to be really key is for us to understand why are people coming to the border to begin with. And I know that Vice President Kamala Harris has been doing some work in Central America, particularly figuring out how does the U.S. do more investments in countries like Guatemala, like Salvador. And she comes with that understanding that we have to have better relationships, stronger relationships with countries who need help if we're going to address issues of the border. Of course, you know, my colleagues and our colleagues on the Republican side are doing everything they can to try to attack her because they see this as our opportunity to try to win the White House. But we have to stop the fear-mongering. The latest study just shows that in 2022, immigrants paid $100 billion in taxes in this country. We are an asset to the country, and I think the Vice President should run on that.
The Vice President understands that in order for people to not have to flee their countries, you need a different type of foreign policy. You need to help invest in those countries to create employment opportunities, stabler democracies, and to level the playing field for ordinary people, for peasants, for farmers, for working class people as well. That is critical. If you ask what does Trump stand for, we don't know. Probably more chaos and more attacks on countries that he has disparaged, and certainly his anti-immigrant rhetoric that is by and large false and a phony construction to create division and fear in our country.
Another big question is who's probably she's going to pick as a VP. Who would you like to see as a candidate, as a VP for the Democrat?
I think we have a great bench. We have several governors in contention. We have at least one U.S. senator. We have a secretary, a sitting secretary as well. We have lots to pick from. I think there are some solid running mates, and that's why we are excited in terms of our prospects, not only to win the White House, but to win the majority in the House and a shot at keeping the Senate.
Does it have to be someone, Congresswoman Ramirez, that is a little bit more moderate? Does she need to balance the ticket?
You know what I think everyone says, we want to make sure that whoever her VP is someone that's going to help her win the election, right? And the question is, what is going to excite people to go from the couch to the polling location? There are a lot of people who have said, I'm just going to sit this out, right? At least they said that a couple weeks ago. She needs a VP that is going to help add. It's an addition game to make sure that people come out and vote. And I dream of a day where we're not just thinking about the great bench we have here, perhaps a Latina, a Latino who could also be a VP. That may not happen this time around, but I certainly know that if we're thinking about the future of this country, we have to start thinking about Latinos in leadership.
There is a lot to look forward to. We hope we can hear from both of you again. Is there any parting words as we look to the DNC of what you're expecting? Just very quickly.
I'm hoping Chicago shines, shows its diversity, its welcoming status as a very pro-immigrant city. People for generations have come here looking for a better life. That's what we have stood for, and that's what we want to show the rest of the country and the world.
That's right. We want to be able to show that Democrats can come together, be united, celebrate our diversities, and hear everyone.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Joining us next, Democratic strategist Delmarie Cobb. She'll weigh in on the black vote. Joining us now on The Brief, Democratic strategist Delmarie Cobb. I've turned to you many, many times over the years. Did you see the Trump? You've definitely heard his speech with the black journalists. Give me your reaction.
Well, first of all, I couldn't believe he was invited. That was the first reaction the day when I learned. But then he lived up to everything we know about him. And for him to turn on Rachel Scott the way he did, who's a respected journalist and covers the White House and covers the Congress, and so he has to know who she is. And for him to immediately turn on her and make her the enemy, he lived up to everything we know about him.
Here's though, if we're going to play devil's advocate, there will be those who are going to say Trump's base loved that. Trump was Trump. What about those who would say Kamala Harris, is she going to go to CPAC? Is she going to speak at the NRA? He did walk into the lion's den. Not sure if he knew what was going to come at him, but do you give him any kudos for that?
Oh, he played them. I give him plenty of kudos for it. He got exactly out of it what he wanted. He showed that I am powerful. I walked into the lion's den. I took them head on, and I made fools of them. I showed them exactly who they are. They're fake news. They lie. They're hostile. They are not for democracy. He talked about Kamala being not black. He did everything. He won that. He played them, and they're the ones who fell prey to what he was trying to do.
So if we take just what happened yesterday, does it excite the base of black voters? If there might have been some saying, I'm not sure I'm with Kamala or I am, what happens from there?
Well, if anybody was sitting on the sideline before that, they certainly should be in the fight now, because he definitely showed us who he is. He has no respect for the black community whatsoever. I mean, from calling Kamala Harris talking about her ethnicity, to talking about black jobs, to talking about abortion, all the issues for Democrats and for African Americans and for anybody else who is of a different, who's not white and black and male in this country. I mean, he showed you exactly who he is.
All right. What about you and Kamala Harris? What are your thoughts? Would she have made it through a primary had there been one?
You know, she's a different person than she was in 2020. I mean, we've seen her mature, and I think part of it is being on the job. I mean, it's not like she didn't have all the qualifications to be vice president. I mean, when you look at the fact that, look at how far she has ascended in such a short amount of time, from district attorney to attorney general to U.S. Senate to vice president, all within 20 years. I mean, that is a rapid ascension. And so that's another thing. For Trump to sit up there and call her disqualified and talk about she didn't pass the bar, I mean, she was an attorney general, she was a district attorney. And so I think that she had all the background, and now she has the on-the-job training. And so she's fully prepared.
Issues that matter to black voters. Will just having her on the ticket, does that say, okay, we don't care because she's on the ticket? Or will there be some sort of look at examination of what about gas? What about prices, inflation? What about the border? And might they look at Trump's policies and say, I don't know, it's a toss-up?
Well, first of all, we know that his policies were not pro-America. They were not pro the working class. I mean, everybody forgets that 1 million people died from COVID under him, as well as the fact that how many businesses closed and how many people were out of work because he denied the severity of a pandemic. So, yes, there's inflation, but Biden had to overheat the economy in order to offset all the damage that Trump did. And so now we're feeling all the benefits. I mean, things are getting better. We can't sit up here and pretend that things aren't getting better. And look at all the news stories about people traveling. Every time we look up, more and more people are traveling. Well, where are they getting that money from? They must have disposable income. People aren't traveling on no money. So I think there's a disconnect, and hopefully she can make the connection to how your life is better than it was under Trump.
You've been through several campaigns. Give us your wrap-up thought of how you compare this Kamala Harris rollout with the Barack Obama rollout.
Well, it was totally different. I mean, first of all, you've got 100 days, and so you've got to hit the ground running. We don't have time to second guess. We have to get behind the candidate, and we have to do the heavy lifting. We were going to have to do the heavy lifting if Biden had stayed in. Now we really have to do the heavy lifting, and I think you're seeing it, and I think you're seeing it on steroids.
We appreciate it so much. You know, you cut through and you give us exactly what we want to hear. That's what the brief is all about. Delmarie Cobb, thank you so much for joining us. Now that we've talked about demographics and what issues might matter in November, where are we headed next week? There are some big decisions ahead. With voters heading to the polls for early voting soon, there are ballot deadlines to meet. First order of business. The window for the Democratic National Convention virtual roll call is technically open until Monday, but Friday, Kamala Harris clinched enough delegates to be the official nominee. The next step, picking a running mate. The campaign says that will happen by Tuesday, with plans for Harris and her vice president pick traveling together on a swing state tour next week. Starting with Philadelphia and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, they will hit 7 states in 5 days.
Hardworking Americans cannot afford groceries or rent because of her policies. And my question to the American people is, do you want a president who is disloyal to this country, or do you want one who is willing to take a bullet for it? I think I know the answer.
Also look for former President Trump and running mate J.D. Vance to be back on the campaign trail. As for whether we can expect a debate September 10th, here's the latest back and forth.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
Kamala Harris bragged that, quote, "I will proudly put my record against Donald Trump's any day of the week." Well, Kamala, let's go. Challenge accepted.
Political strategist Tom Bowen weighs in on why this debate will be a must-watch.
The last debate mattered so much, so the stakes are higher. And that's an enormous amount of pressure, but it's for the vice president an enormous opportunity because most of the country knows her, but they don't really know her that well.
Starting on August 19th, all eyes on the Windy City as Democrats convene in Chicago for their convention. Both parties predicting a close contest. As for one of the biggest political questions, Hillary Clinton lost to Trump in 2016. Does a woman at the top of the ticket stand a chance?
I think it's a different race than 2016 in so many ways because Donald Trump was the new thing in 2016. Now Kamala Harris is the new thing, and Trump has a record. You know, you kind of know what you're getting by putting him back in charge.
Just know the Midwest, it is crucial for this election for both parties. Of course, the Democrats, they're meeting here in the Midwest in Chicago. Republicans already met in Wisconsin for the RNC. But the 3 big states everybody's watching in November, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. That's it for The Brief. Thanks so much for joining us.